Hey, everybody. Welcome. I'm John Calder. I'm the president of the Independence Institute. I'm thrilled that you could join us for now our third installment of, well, drinking right here in this studio. So we built this studio so we could have a conversation with you and, well, do a little, oh, now I'm getting an echo. There we go. So we're going to be talking about all sorts of good stuff, but more importantly, we got to break the isolation. We got to give it to the man. And I figure what better way to do it than hoisting a few beers at a bar with some friends. And I'm really thrilled that John Fund, who's been a friend for a long time, and I let out a secret, John, you are actually a Star Trek geek like I am, one of the original Star Trek geeks. You look like you're already tucked in for a good night's sleep. I can't hear you, but it sounds like you're tucked in. Still can't hear you. Still can't. So you're already there we go. There we go. So are you all tucked into bed? Do you have your footy pajamas on? Is that what I'm guessing?
I'm comfortable. Let's put it that way. And I'm very comfortable.
I tell you what, let's just jump right into it. I don't know anybody in political reporting and commentating that knows more about local situations than you do, John Fund. I'm always amazed. I mean, everybody knows what's going on in Washington. There's lots of commentary about that. But you seem to know what's going on in cities, towns, states all around the country, unlike anybody I've ever seen. And now I find out you know a lot about the international scene. Your article on Sweden was eye-opening for me. Tell me what Sweden is doing differently than the United States.
Well,
besides ABBA.
There is an ABBA museum in Stockholm, believe it or not. If I were a Swedish expert talking with you, John, the first thing I would say is, why is the rest of the world doing something different from us? Because this pandemic, for reasons we can go into, is the first one in recorded history where we have, rather than primarily protect the old, the frail, and the sick, and we're doing that, thank goodness, we're imprisoning the healthy. Now, this is an interesting approach, and you would think that there was some scientific evidence behind this theory, but there isn't. In fact, Dr. Birx and Dr. Fauci have both admitted, in the press conferences, this is a theory.
It's a model. It's a model.
It's a model. It's based on our models. And you know what they say about models? Garbage in, garbage out. And as we know, the models have not done particularly well. The Imperial College model that basically forced Boris Johnson and Donald Trump into going from what I think was a modified strategy, which emphasized social distancing, prevention, lots of personal hygiene, caring for the sick, the old, and the others, especially those in nursing homes. That one model probably influenced more public policy than any model in history, because it's got half the world's population locked down now and probably more.
Let me jump in and let folks know, if you want to be part of it, a couple rules. One, you have to be on Zoom. Two, you have to raise your hand in Zoom. And three, you have to have a drink. Otherwise, I don't want to talk to you because it's after hours. Put the kids to bed. So by all means, put your hand up and we'll get you into the conversation and it'll be terrific. So talk to me about Sweden. Sweden did it differently. Instead of imprisoning healthy people under house arrest, Sweden basically said, be careful. And what else did they do?
Well, the Swedes basically did what I would call a modified program of social distancing and prevention. And here's what it involves. You go to school up until age 16, but your colleges and universities are closed. You cannot have any
kids are still going to school
over 50 people.
Over 50. But kids are still going to school.
No. Up to age 16.
Oh, got it.
Up to age 16, they're going to school. Universities and colleges are closed, although that'll probably change soon. You cannot have more than 50 people in any group or gathering. You can leave your house. You're encouraged to work from home, and a lot of Swedes are. You can go to a bar or restaurant, but you can't stand up at the bar. You have to have your drink sitting down. You have to have your meal sitting down. The meal has to be hot food, not cold food, and the tables have to be 5 feet apart. Otherwise, life goes on as normal, basically. They had some problems in the nursing homes because they have a very large institutional nursing home policy. A lot of other countries have smaller nursing homes, so they didn't have a lot of spread. Otherwise, life goes on. And their death rate is higher than that of Norway and Finland, which are their neighbors. Not much higher than Denmark, which is another neighbor, but much, much lower than the Netherlands, England, France, Italy, Spain.
What about the United States? Really? All right. First of all, I got to tell you, you need to move your camera down a little bit because you're already falling asleep into bed and we're talking to your nose. Okay. It's a very nice nose. So there you go. That's much better. So, but you're telling me businesses are still open, restaurants are still open, up to 50 people can get together, and their death rate is better. That is fewer deaths than the United States.
Now, admittedly, Sweden has a great deal of social cohesion. People tend to trust the authorities. So when the public health agency says, do your social distancing, be careful when you're riding the subway or the buses, stay apart, don't get too close to people. The vast majority of Swedes follow it. But I think actually Americans have done better than we expected on this. I think people are complying very well. And not just because they're being told to, but because they think it's common sense and it's for the good of the community. The Swedes have, according to their best experts this week, they are probably going to reach what is called herd immunity in Stockholm, where they have most of their cases, the capital, next week. Herd immunity means something like 50% of the population have had the virus course through them, most of them asymptomatic, not having any symptoms. And that at that point, the transmission rate, the ability of the virus to go from one person to the other becomes such that you're not going to grow the virus much more. In other words, herd immunity is what you want because then the virus stops spreading like wildfire and it's containable.
You made this point in your article. It was on National Review Online, really worthwhile, that people hate what Sweden is doing because it gives us a contrast. The beautiful thing about what we're doing here in Colorado, shutting down everything, is that when the death rate is nominal and every life is a treasure, every death is a tragedy, that all those lives saved will be chalked up to leftist command and control house arrests. And I want a point of comparison. I didn't see that until I saw your article about Sweden. Is it a fair point of contrast?
Well, it's a different strategy. They do want to save lives, but their basic theory, John, is this. The more we learn about the virus, the more we learn it probably came to the United States earlier than we originally thought, much earlier. And because it was a new virus with no vaccine, it was racing through the population. And you've probably seen those studies, whether it's Santa Clara County or Los Angeles, or even there's one county in Colorado that's done a study, in Massachusetts, where the number of cases that we haven't detected may be 50 to 80 times greater than what we know, which means the virus is much more prevalent in our population than we realized. If that's true, what that means is the death rate for this is, the mortality is far lower than we thought. It's very much contagious, though. And we are going to have to grapple with the fact that probably a whole lot of people already have it. So if that's the case, do we want to take the certain number of deaths that are likely, however many thousand it is, do we want to take them over a longer period of time, or do we want to structure them so that we have more of them up front and fewer of them at the back end? And that's the issue here. We are probably going to lose tens of thousands of people. But remember, and we can go into this, I think it's a separate question, in the Asian flu, which I'm old enough to remember, I lived right near the epicenter of it in Northern California. In 1968 and 69, it killed 116,000 Americans, the Asian
100, let me make sure I got that number right. 116,000 Americans in 1969. What was the population in the United States in 1969?
205 million, about 2/3 of what it is today. The equivalent today would be about 170,000.
Wow. I don't think we're going to get to that point with this. All right. I don't remember.
No, but your point is very important, which is it because we went to the whole scale lockdown, or is it because we used our treatments and our skills and our ability to do intelligent social distancing, intelligent separation of the old, the frail, and the weak? And that's why the Swedish contrast, because it's a different model than the rest of the world is following.
So in the 1969 Asian flu epidemic, you remember it, you were in your mid 40s at that time. Tell me, what did they do differently? What did they do differently when it came to fighting it? Did they close down most of California?
No. Remember, the one thing we also know about the COVID-19 is it doesn't really affect children very much. Most flus have the children as to the rest of the family and to their friends. This one attacks older, frailer people far more than others in a very dramatic way in some cases. California and the rest of the country treated it like we treated the Hong Kong flu of 1957, the polio crisis that we used to have periodically in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s until the vaccine came, and even the Spanish flu. We tried to practice personal hygiene. We tried to keep people separated, and we tried very, very hard to use whatever treatments we had. We obviously have much better treatments now. We have much more sophisticated technology. But the difference, I think, between now and 1969, frankly, is cultural and political, John. Politicians today now know that the pandemic is coming. They have some warning. We obviously were slow on this, catching the switch on the train tracks on this, but we knew it was coming. And as images on our television filled our screens with people in hospital waiting rooms or in gurneys waiting to die, the Italians, I think, the scenes of pain and suffering that we saw there were very effective. Politicians went into what I call flash panic. Oh my God, something is happening. We have to do something. What do we do? And the easiest thing in the world to demonstrate that you were going to do something was to shut down the economy, to separate everyone. They did not want to be blamed for any one extra death.
Tell you what, let's grab some of the folks who want to be part of this conversation.
I just want to finish one point. But the problem with the total lockdown is, as you know, John, there are a lot of economic studies For every extra percentage point increase in the unemployment rate, you lose between 20 and 40,000 more people because of depression, suicide, self-harm, domestic violence, strokes and heart attacks brought on by stress. There are a lot of physical problems that are created by locking people in and taking away their jobs and their livelihood. So the question becomes, do we treat this as something in which every life is so precious that we have to go to extraordinary measures to protect those who are visible while, and this is the Bastiat famous essay, The Seen and the Unseen, or do we also recognize that there are victims of this that will happen if we have a complete lockdown and people can't get out of their house, and elective surgeries? You know, I noticed Colorado is finally going to open up elective surgeries, I think sometime next month. There are a lot of people with heart and other ailments. Their surgeries are called elective, but if they had them, they'd live, and if they didn't have them, they might die.
I agree. Right down to the dermatologist taking care of melanoma. All right, let's go to some of these guys on Zoom who want to be part of this. Let's talk to Zerblet. Really, is it Zerblet?
Hey, can you hear me, John?
I can hear you.
Yeah, this is Sven from Cheyenne again.
Oh, hi, Sven.
My drink, first of all. I want to show you the bottle because it's almost empty and you couldn't probably tell me. You see what this is? This is Icelandic vodka with licorice taste. So it's almost empty, unfortunately. I got to go back to Reykjavik and get some more.
You're in lockdown. You can't.
Not in Wyoming, but okay. But I wanted to make a couple of comments. I think it's great to bring up Sweden, and I totally agree that a lockdown is a really stupid idea. It's, in fact, but what I wanted to get to is that there is emerging research that shows that the lockdown hasn't had any effect whatsoever. If you look at, there's an Israeli study that's out. I've only seen secondhand reference to it yet. It's not out in English yet, but it appears to show that the virus follows the same trajectory, the same trend, regardless of a country, whether a country has a lockdown or not. And that's strong evidence that this lockdown was a complete mistake. But I also want to point out that the death rate in Sweden is actually higher than it is here, both if you count it as share of confirmed cases. It's almost at 12% in Sweden. And if you count it per million residents, which some people use, I would refer to Finland, which has a much lower death rate than we have. The reason why I want to point that out is that there's another factor at work here, and it's the socialized healthcare system in Sweden. I have friends who work in healthcare over there, and I've followed the news out of Sweden throughout this crisis. The hospitals in Stockholm, for especially, were starved already going into this because it's a single payer system. So they had no capacity. It's just like in Canada, they had no capacity. In Toronto, they were out saying when this emerged, we don't have any spare capacity.
Well, I tell you, let's just jump to it though. Who's the best contrast for the American model of shutting down and destroying an economy? If it's not Sweden, and let me ask John Fund as well, is there a place that we can look to and go, look, they did it completely differently, had basically the same results? Is Sweden that place? Is there a state that's doing it right here in the United States that if we did it over again, it would be the one we want to be like? Is Wyoming the example? Because they haven't shut down much. Let me ask John Fund first.
Oh, sure.
Well, you certainly will know more about Wyoming, but there's 7 or 8 states that have not gone to complete lockdown, and they've been bitterly criticized. One thing that anyone who's a public health expert or government official knows, if you go against the orthodoxy of the complete lockdown, even though there's no scientific evidence that this has worked or will work, you are going to be bitterly criticized, called all kinds of names, and have your professional career threatened. So the people who go against the grain here are very, very brave.
It really, what's so insulting about this, you cannot question the lockdown. You cannot say that maybe it's time to open up without being called a murderer. And the fear part of this is just immense. I tell you what, let's grab a few more of these Zoomers as they're coming in. Zoomers, I see you out there. Just raise your hand and we'll get right to you. Why don't we head over to Matthew? Hey, Matthew, I want to know, what are you drinking tonight?
Jim Beam.
Jim Beam. That's not very exotic. That's not bad.
Well, it was on $25 for a handle. So, I mean, I can't pass that up. I'm a value guy. It's the best value out there. One, I really appreciate this. Last week I was a little overexcited, so you have to bear with me on that.
No, last week we were spectacular.
I'm extremely frustrated because a lot of what I'm seeing is I'm seeing a collectivist mindset that has infiltrated our society with what you're talking. It's the shaming, flatten the curve. Most of the people that I interact with, unfortunately, many of whom I work with, it almost as if I'm surrounded, like we're in the zombie apocalypse almost, of unthinking automatons who are part of a Borg that will attack anything that is outside of them. And if you dare bring evidence, reason, facts, anything to that challenges what their perceived paradigm, which is they're learning from ABC, CBS, NBC, the standard protocol, mainstream media, they literally go into attack mode and defensive mode. And just to kind of round this out, there were studies done a couple of years ago that talks about cognitive dissonance. And if you hold on one belief, you're met with evidence, you're going to go back to your original belief even stronger. So I think this whole situation it appears to me that they are setting up a foundation to change society forever, to go, don't trust anyone, get ready for mandated vaccinations. And they're blowing up essentially the seasonal flu, which might be a little more volatile, but they're also using, they're not doing, the PCR tests aren't reliable. They have false positives and false negatives. And then on top of that, they're putting presumptive cases, and like you guys talked about last week. So this whole trifecta of people are angry and they don't want, they're so scared.
Let me try it this way.
Yeah.
When people are confused, when people are scared, they are more susceptible to being open to control. And Fund and I were talking about this earlier in the day when we were chatting, and this is going to sound crazy beans, but I remember as a kid going, how does Nazi Germany ever happen? And I'm not comparing this with Nazi Germany. Let me make it really clear.
I think you should, though. You should.
But I've always wondered, how do people get to the point where they will take away other people's liberties so casually? And after just a few weeks of a virus, we haven't had years of depression. We haven't had hyperinflation. We haven't had scarcity of food the way that other countries have had in history where tyrants take over. And people are let me bring it over to Fund here for a second. Last week, our friend Steve Moore suggested maybe it's time for some civil disobedience. And he said these people who are out protesting to reopen are the new Rosa Parks, and the leftist media went crazy, made national news. So I expect you to say something that'll make national news as well.
Well,
I agree with Steve.
Let me play devil's advocate here. If you're an elected official and the experts come to you, remember, the lockdown was not sold as a means of solving the virus problem or making it go away. It was sold as flattening the curve so that we don't overwhelm our health system. If a bunch of modelers come to you and public health experts come to you and say, we don't have the ICU beds, we don't have the capacity, the health system was going to crash. That's why the lockdown was put in. Remember, it's only been a month. That's how it was sold to us. Now, if I'm an elected official, I'm going to pay very close attention to that because, believe me, if it's true that the system collapses, I'm toast. And so is my career. Now, if that happens, it's horrible. It didn't happen. It did not happen. We rose to the challenge. Our great capacity for ingenuity, innovation, logistics kicked in. But here's what Carl Hegstrom from Oxford University told me. If you get into a strict lockdown, you have to have an exit strategy. And that's our problem right now that our elected officials have. They got into this based on flattening the curve so we don't overwhelm our health system. Now that our health system is not overwhelmed, how do you get out of it? Because I guarantee you, if we get out of it precipitously, or even in a moderate way, we're going to see a little bit of a spike, or maybe a moderate spike in deaths, because we have bottled that up in the pipeline. That scares elected officials to death. Remember, John, I don't think people are trying, most of the politicians who are doing this, Governor Whitmer in Michigan, whom we could talk about, it's different, are not really trying to seize control of our lives and become tyrants. They're scared people, and they're scared because they've gotten into a lockdown position they don't easily see a way out of without screaming headlines and CNN banging on them and being called a murderer.
All right. I mean, I get it. I get it. But all I'm saying is now I see what people will do when they're scared. Hey, I want to introduce a friend of mine who's already pouring a drink. Tom Cranowiter is joining us. Tom runs Speakeasy Ideas. He's worked for Hillsdale. He worked for Claremont. You've done everything.
I've been around the block.
You've been around the block. So,
cheers, my friend.
By the way, what did you bring us?
I brought us some Ardbeg.
This is good.
Which is so I've kind of gotten into Scotch here recently. This is an Islay Scotch. So it's kind of smoky and peaty like the Lafroig, which I think you like. That's a little island on the southern part of Scotland. It's a single malt. You know, it's funny. I for years I never understood what single malt means. It means that it's one distillery and that it's all malt. It's all barley in there. And it's fantastic if you like, peaty.
It's good. That's what I got.
Tell you what, I don't know.
You want some ice?
No. Just like this. I don't know if I mentioned this to you before or not. I have a trip to Scotland planned in July. A group of buddies and I, we're going there for one purpose.
To get drunk.
To drink Scotch. I've done it. We've had all the, you've done this. You've done the tours of
by the way, I don't know if you've ever met my friend, John Fund, writing now for National Review. And John's already ready. This is what makes John a great drinker. He's already laying down. So when it's time to pass out,
he doesn't have anywhere to go.
John, what are you drinking, by the way, John Fund?
I confess that as a member of the Eastern media establishment, I'm sipping an elite drink called Grand Marnier.
Grand Marnier is spectacular. That is an elitist, wonderful, classy drink. Can you hear okay?
French.
I can. Yep.
It's French.
Is it French? All right. Well, then stop drinking it. Hey, so you've heard this conversation so far.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about, am I right that people are scared, and when people are scared, they're open to the idea of governmental control?
Yeah, absolutely. Fear breeds tyranny, and it's one of the things you say often in many different contexts that freedom is dangerous, right? You got to live dangerously if you want to be free. And right now, there's no better reminder of that theme. Look, freedom, when you really boil it down, what it ultimately means, it means adults have to live as adults. They got to stop living as children. That there is no big mommy or big daddy figure out there who's going to take care of you and make all your decisions for you and protect you from all.
That sounds so cruel. I can guarantee you somebody's listening going,
yeah,
this is why these libertarians and conservatives are so evil. They want people to die. Great. So we crowd all the health care. Everybody would die.
Yeah.
And you want a free for all. And so my folks are in their 80s. To hell with them. People in nursing homes, to hell with them.
Mine are too. So you know what we did? I was supposed to go see my parents a few weeks ago, and I'm not young, so clearly my parents are not young, and neither of them are in great health. And you know what we did? We called each other on the phone and we talked about it. And this was when all this was just really starting. They live one state over where there's very little coronavirus. I'm here in Colorado. And so we had a discussion. I said, Mom, Dad, this corona thing is popping up here in Colorado. I don't know if I have it. I could be carrying it and not show any symptoms. It's probably not a wise thing for me to come visit you right now. Because I
know exactly what your mother said.
And they agreed.
Because my mother said the same thing, which was, what, you don't want to see me? What? You can't even come for a quick visit? What? No, they felt the same way.
And so my theme lately has been live freely, choose wisely. To be free doesn't mean we have to be stupid. It doesn't mean we have to be unwise. We can be responsible. We can gather information. We can make wise choices and still be a free people.
let me go to the question of opening up, and Fund and I have talked about this. I believe the financial damage that is going to happen, the fiscal damage that's going to happen, is going to outweigh this virus by a long shot. John, do you know of any state that's doing it right? Is there a state out there that you're saying this guy's doing it right? We know here in Colorado, Polis is going to do a slow open. I don't even know what that means. I'd like to see a fast open. I believe with our friend Steve Moore, it's time to open it up. Is there one state you point to, John, that you think have done a better job than most?
Well, with the exception of those states like South Dakota or Wyoming that haven't done a complete lockdown, every state is basically in quarantine. And as a result, we don't have that kind of sharp contrast that we have with Sweden. And there, of course, the economies of the states that haven't been in lockdown are primarily rural. The real issue here is this. Our public health services failed us. The Chinese, of course, did far worse because they lied about it and they misled the world, and that helped take the genie out of the bottle. But our public health service was slow on this. At the end of this process, when we're over the hump with the virus, do we really want to surrender more power and authority to these same people, these same type of people?
That's a great point.
Except we're going to give them control of the economy instead of public health. I wonder about that.
You hit it. Both of us are here in studio are just laughing about that. So we're pissed off that our government didn't do the right thing. We're pissed off that CDC didn't handle it right. And so what we're going to do is give them a lot more power and a lot more authority. It's a beautiful thing. I tell you what, again, let me ask folks, if you want to join in, by all means, just raise your hand on Zoom and be part of it.
Let's take another question.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's talk to Dave here and see what Dave is doing. First of all, Dave, I need to know, what are you drinking, Dave?
I'm just finishing off a Moscow Mule. I thought it was appropriate.
Very Soviet of Dave.
Yeah, Nostrovia.
For those who don't know, what actually is a Moscow Mule, and you have to do it in what is it, a copper or brass
copper, I think.
Yeah,
Copper mug. It is vodka with ginger beer and lime.
Yeah.
Wow. You communist
delicious.
bastard.
Yeah.
All right, what do you got for us?
Tongue in cheek. Well, I wanted to point out that this whole lockdown is actually ruining our healthcare system too. So hospitals are empty, doctors' offices are closed, private practice physicians are on the brink of going out of business. So it's really having this effect of ruining the pseudo free market economy of healthcare, which I think is by design as well. It's shut it all down. We don't like the non-single payer healthcare system. And this is a great opportunity to just really put, especially independent practices, out of business.
I've talked to dentists here in Colorado who have been narked on while doing emergency procedures, a lot of times by other dentists who want folks to, want the government to squash their competition.
Right.
And our Attorney General, Phil Weiser, is out there sending out letters and nastygrams saying, I will prosecute you. Now, if you want to go to a dentist, it's you and a dentist. And
you would think the dentist knows something about disease and doing that safely, right?
You would think so. And by the way, if Phil Weiser wants to put his hands in somebody else's mouth just for recreation, that is protected.
Right.
But this is not.
But look, let me back up here a little bit. Just give a big overarching view of what's going on. When I've graphed out, and a number of other economists have, the total global amount of wealth throughout all of human history. And what's fascinating is the line is real low and real flat for thousands of years. And what that means is, it means most human beings lived in miserable poverty, right? For thousands of years. A handful of tyrants and thugs, they came up with all kinds of fancy names, right? Caesar and Pharaoh and these things. Controlled.
Still lived like rats by
our standards.
Yeah.
Until you get to the middle part of the 1700s, around the time of the American Revolution. And in the Western part of the world, in the free part of the world, for the first time ever, people got this idea. They said, hey, how about if government starts protecting property, protecting freedom? And that unleashed this incentive. Human beings, all of a sudden, they thought, wow, I can be creative, I can be entrepreneurial, I can be inventive. And whatever I create and produce or whatever I trade with others, I actually get to keep it. I'll be secure. Everything went up. The curve is just amazing. It's this hockey stick phenomenon. Lifespans go up. They started inventing medicines and transportation and communication and better housing, better clothing, better everything that we want. That's the key to human flourishing, right? Is the creation of wealth, developing, inventing things that human beings want and need. And what we're seeing right now is the exact opposite. It's just shutting this all down. And I don't think many politicians fully understand this tremendous, awesome force for good that they have just clamped down totally.
Well, and politicians are a reaction to the culture. As I always say, politics is the lagging indicator of culture.
Mhm.
And so people are happy and fine and comfortable with smarter people making these decisions. I want to bring fun back into this because I remember when we Republicans, we conservatives, beat up Obama for putting out $800 billion worth of stimulus that went nowhere.
Right.
And now turn around today and we've got
That seems like nothing.
3 times that amount and growing.
Yeah.
Mind you, I think the way that this is being distributed is a whole lot better, but it's still a political process.
Yep.
My big fear is that we're printing money out of nowhere.
Mhm.
And when that happens, at some point, something breaks. And by the way, the United States is still the currency in the world. And if we're doing it in a reserved way compared to most people, imagine what other countries are doing.
Let's hear what John
Yeah,
has
I wanna
to say.
hear what
And
Fund has
then
to say
let's
about
talk
that.
a little bit about wealth and money, how they differ from each other.
Fund, are you worried about how much money is being printed?
Well, the last few years, we were always told as the debt grew, inflation would come back. It hasn't, and I think that's lulled us into a feeling of false security. We now know that the Federal Reserve is not just some, mechanism in Washington that tries to regulate the money supply. It's the printing press. It will inject whatever it takes to keep the economy afloat, even if we lock down the economy and the dollars and bonds, trillions. Reserve has complete, and I don't think we're ever going to see a return to the old Federal Reserve.
Oh, the old Federal Reserve again.
There are some fundamental things that have changed that we'll never go back from. And here's what we have to do. We have to recognize that we can't spend our way out of the recovery from this. We are going to have to focus on growth. There's 2 small advantages, 2 small silver linings that come out of this crisis, John. Here's the first one. All of this junk that you've been fighting in Colorado about diversity and, political correctness, doesn't that seem really small and petty? As
you well know, Mr.
2019
Fund,
now.
I lost a pretty good writing job because I insisted there were just 2 sexes.
Well,
yeah. And
when people don't have a job,
that was an important thing.
Well, John, when people don't have a job and the food lines and food banks are going past the parking lot into the next subdivision, some of those concerns that we had a few weeks ago paled by comparison. We're going to have to focus this economy on growth. I can guarantee you the Independence Institute is going to be focusing more on growth the next few months of this year, because that's the only way we can productively work our way out of this problem. The second silver lining is this, and Independence Institute was very active in this. In March, just as this began, you presented Governor Polis with a whole list of regulations, impositions, restrictions that were preventing people from delivering care. For example, out-of-state people who had licenses or professional credentials could provide health care in Colorado. You helped them with that. Governor Polis took some of your recommendations and ran with them. We can take this as an opportunity, and I think Competitive Enterprise Institute even has a hashtag, never needed. There are a whole lot of regulations that we now know. We got rid of them in minutes when we wanted to. Well, if we can get rid of them in minutes in a crisis, just think how many we might be able to get rid of when we have a little bit of reflection and time and recognize, the world didn't end when we got rid of these petty Andy cosmetology commissions, regulating how much people have to have, how many hours of courses they have to take to braid hair.
There are some states that require licensing for interior designers. So
I have the best one of all. In Florida,
Yeah.
several counties make you get a license to be a stripper.
Yeah, you laugh at it now, but if you were the head of the commission, you would love it.
An amateur.
You're better than an amateur.
Don, here in 1960, 4% of jobs in this country needed a license or professional qualification. You know what it is now?
No.
19.
Wow.
By the way, it was 23, and then the Institute for Justice and some other groups have been whittling away at it. We've made some progress. There is no reason why 1/5 of the jobs in this country require a professional license. Now, some jobs do, but
And I believe stripper should be one of them.
well, professionals are better than amateurs.
I tell you what, let's go back to some Zoomers. Again, if you want to be part of it, please raise your hand on Zoom. I promise we will get to you. We'll do our best. Let's talk to Laura Carno. And there's a stripper joke right here, but I'm maturing, so I'm not going to take it. What are you drinking, Laura Carno?
Well, thank you for not going there. I am drinking a Tullamore Dew.
She's already had a few of them. I can tell already. She's already had a few.
And for my friend Andrew Diederich, who is on here, I also have my Army War College.
No, you got to move it over because it looks like a field. Oh, there we go.
There we go.
There it is. Yep.
I see Andrew cheering. So you mentioned dentists, and I just had I watched your show last week about with the dentist who got shut down. The Attorney General sent a cease and desist. They had to close. But what I thought was fascinating about what he said is if there is if somebody had a toothache that's not considered an emergency because they're not going to die from it, but then they went to the emergency room because they couldn't go to their dentist, it was actually putting that patient and everybody else in more danger because there is COVID-19 at the emergency room.
Yeah, that really did blow my mind when the dentist told me we're not allowed, so people are not coming in to take care of it. And when you have a toothache and it becomes an emergency, you go to the emergency room where all the COVID cases are.
Right.
It's
the worst place in the world to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's terrific. I also asked him for some laughing gas. It didn't work.
Let me add
before you do that, I'm gonna help myself to more of your Ardbeg.
Ardbeg. It's a very fine Scotch.
Quanto questo?
Yes.
How much?
$50
Yeah.
in that range. Little more expensive than Lefroy, but not crazy.
I'll get a baggie before you leave and
no, that's my gift. I don't. You said this was a party tonight, so I don't like to come empty-handed.
Oh well, then I'm taking this home.
All right. No, that's for you to share with your Independence Institute folks.
No, for everybody.
But here's an important thing I want to
yes.
add on to this whole discussion of licensure, which is a subcomponent of the larger issue of regulation, government commanding how things get done, when they get done, how people run their businesses and use their property. One of the challenges we're facing here is this whole problem originated in China, and we're incredibly dependent on China for virtually everything. I'm going to exaggerate here to make a point. Nearly everything that is made that we Americans want and use gets made in China, including things like our medicines. Do you know that nobody has produced penicillin in the United States, actually made penicillin for over 15 years? All that has gone to China. And the great question, of course, is why? Why do all these American businesses go to China to have everything manufactured? And there are numerous reasons, but the number one is regulations, right? To escape the burdens of regulations in the United States. So while we're in the mood here for scaling back regulations, repealing, for my part, I'd like to see not only suspensions of regulations, I would like to see not only repealing of regulations, but actually abolishing some of the regulatory agencies that crank out all these regulations. If we can do that, there's no reasons why Americans cannot compete with the Chinese.
Right, so at the end of this quarter, or in a couple months, we're going to find out that unemployment could be at a record high.
Yep.
We haven't seen anything like this since the Great Depression. This might even be worse than the Great Depression as far as the speed in which it happened.
Yes.
So the question is, we go in one of two ways, which is we go in a Trump kind of way, which is we have to unleash the power of the marketplace and create wealth so that we can solve this, or this is the opportunity that the left has been looking for. Let me bring it back to John Fund again. Do you disagree with me that this overall has to go one way or the other? And I'm not talking in 3 weeks. I'm talking in 2 months. Which way does most of America go? Towards open markets or towards more command and control? John Fund.
Well, as long as people are scared, they're going to go towards control and even soft authoritarianism. You know, the problem with a war is the controls you put on during a war often linger during peacetime.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to avoid that. That's why we have to get out.
Tell me about food rationing. You told me this earlier when we were chatting. Yeah. Tell me about the UK.
In Britain, in 1945, the war ended. They won the war. But the controls remained in place. Food rationing did not end completely until 1955, 10 years after the war. The ID card, the national ID cards, which Britons abhorred and hated before the war, lasted till 1952. The draft, conscription, lasted till the 60s. Once you put controls in place, it's much harder to get rid of them. That is why, with health and humanitarian considerations, fully engaged here, we have to get out of this as fast as possible. As the doctor at Oxford University told me, you get into the lockdown quickly, but you have to get out of it quickly too. And obviously there's going to be, in Colorado, following a phased approach, but it needs to be as fast as possible. And of course, in 3 or 4 weeks, we're going to learn more about the virus. We know a lot more about it than we did a month ago. We have to take the knowledge that we're gathering in about the mortality rate and about the transmission rate.
One of the things we did
by lifting the economic restrictions.
One of the things we did learn about the virus is that alcohol kills a virus, and therefore there is no virus.
That's right.
In our mouth.
I was thinking about you tonight.
I'm
looking out for your safety here, John.
Let's go back to some of these Zoomers as well. Let's talk to Gary. Hey, Gary Burkholder, tell me.
By the way, John, I have to interrupt briefly.
Yeah.
In Kenya, the authorities have coronavirus survival kits. This is everything you need, a swab for a test and, food supplies and everything. Included in every coronavirus survival kit in Kenya is a pint of Hennessy's.
Amen.
Oh, that's just
your strategy is government policy in Kenya.
Oh, God bless it. All right, so you add that with the commissioner of strippers, and I think I've got the perfect job. Gary Burkholder, tell me, what are you drinking?
Bullet rye whiskey.
A little rye whiskey.
Rye whiskey.
Yep.
That's a man's drink right there. I'm not man enough to drink rye whiskey.
I wanted to read you a little piece out of the paper today at Steamboat.
Yeah.
Police responded to a call from someone who reported they heard secondhand that a clerk at a store at Market Plaza had not worn a mask a few days earlier.
All right, let's talk about the narco side of this. Yeah. I just saw something, I think it might have been on Drudge, there have been 14,000 complaints in New York City about people not following the rules. And this tattletale syndrome really concerns me. Now, a lot of these people believe, hey, I am saving lives by making sure, as you know, we got a complaint filed against us because a few people came out of one of our tapings, and there were 4 people, their family members, who went to the car together and left, but they were not 6 feet apart.
Mm-hmm.
And we got a call from the city,
Mm-hmm.
and the lawyers had to take care of it. And you know, if it was one of our political opponents who was just, you know, trying to make trouble for us,
yeah,
I can almost respect that. But it wasn't that. It's just some little fascist nannyist who's trying to save lives.
Well, I almost think it's a more primordial thing than merely saving lives, because we find this phenomenon throughout totalitarian, tyrannical regimes. Within the human soul, within many human souls, is this deep desire not merely to follow the rules, but this outrage, this anger when others don't follow the rules. Our common friend Ross Kaminsky loves to tell the story of he was in Germany, spent a lot of time in Germany, and he was out with some friends. The bars had closed down. It's 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, right?
Don't even tell me. Let me guess. I bet he walked across the empty street.
Yes.
And the people there were like, no, you have to go to the end
One
of the
old
street.
man.
Wait.
There was nobody around. No cars, no people. One old man yelled out at them, said, "Das verboten." Right? That's forbidden to walk across the street when the light's red, even though there was nobody around. That's that spirit of, I'm going to follow the rules, and by golly, you're going to follow them too. And if you don't, I am going to tell on you. I
am so worried that America, this place where we make our own rules, where we love the individual, is going to turn into the next Germany, where
there's a lot of that there. And you remember when you were a kid and you were in grade school, and you and a few of your buddies were horsing around doing something the teacher probably didn't like, but she didn't see you. And the students who ran off to go tell the teacher, that's what we're surrounded with right now.
I tell you what, I've got a high girl alert, because I hear in between all of us guys who know better, there's actually another woman on the line. So let's talk to Abby. Okay. Abby, welcome. So glad to have you. I need to know, what are you drinking?
I'm drinking red wine. I'm feeling left out with all of the whiskey, but I haven't eaten enough food to start in on that.
Oh no, yeah, no, don't worry. Just
that doesn't stop us,
Abby.
No.
So you've been talking about how fear leads to the ability to control a population, and for that population to almost want to give up that control. How do we combat the fear that everyone seems to be feeling?
Tell you what, let me swing that one to John Fund first. How to combat the fear. And you know, for guys like us, we immediately, I mean, on day one of this house arrest, I was hacked off. And, you know, people in my family, my daughter's like, no, you know, we need to be, no, I wanted to go out, and we're different. We are unusual. So the question is,
I had an answer, by the way.
Yeah.
My answer was, when this was still a rumor, Polis hadn't announced anything. My answer was, okay, for every day that businesses are shut down, all government bureaucrats at all levels in Colorado should not get paid. I don't care if they do their work or not, but they shouldn't get paid, because how they get paid? They get paid with money that's taken from us. So stop their pay, and this whole thing will come to a screeching halt real soon.
You know the reality of this. They're printing money. So Polis is going to get backfilled. And so everybody's getting, not everybody, but a lot of people are getting paid more not to work. John Fund, talk to me about the fear. And again, if you're drinking with us here tonight at Independence Institute, chances are you're a little different than the norm. My chances are you're not fear-based. So how do we get to people who are genuinely scared?
Well, Steve Moore was your guest last week at the Bar B, and I and he and some others are editing a newsletter. You can sign up for it if you go to the website of the Committee to Unleash Prosperity. We We publish a daily newsletter. It gives you information and facts that you won't get anywhere else.
By the way, I got it today. Let me put out a plug here. Committee for Prosperity. It was fast.
Prosperity.
Committee to Unleash Prosperity. It was just boom, boom, boom of incredible data that you could go through quickly. And I mean, I was pretty pissed off beforehand, but I read it and then I was really pissed off. So by all means, everybody jump on this. It's a great service. Keep going, John.
The second thing that you have to understand is, I've done cable television now for 25 years. I've been hired by all the networks. I've worked for CNN. I've worked for MSNBC. I've worked for Fox. Don't watch anything but a little bit of cable television. Tucker Carlson's show, you can make an exception for, a couple others. But do more reading than watching. You are not going to learn anything from television. It's the least efficient and effective way to communicate real facts. And in fact, you may rot your brain if you watch too much of it.
And by the way, do more drinking than reading.
Yes.
It's something that my parents taught me early on.
Read first, then drink. But you have to do it in that order.
And join a lot of online programs by the Independence Institute.
Well, online webinars. There, if you go around all of the groups you respect, including the Independence Institute, you'll find their webinars are far more fact-based and entertaining, frankly, than what you'll get on cable television.
Amen.
The other thing you have to do is talk to your friends and neighbors. Simply tell them, have you ever thought about this? Seek out alternatives. This is the best time, by the way, for everyone on this website to go to their friends, neighbors, and relatives and get them alternative information. Get them on the Independence Institute mailing list. Get them to think about, why are you following the herd? Break away from the herd. Be the unheard.
Because they're saving their lives. I think we don't understand that these folks are doing it
let's
because
be better informed, at least, when we're saving lives.
Agreed. One of my favorite pictures, I think it was on Complete Colorado recently, was somebody from a few months ago, some young social justice warrior demanding change on climate change and, stop fracking. And he said, "This is an emergency now." And it's like, yeah, go ahead. Tell me why we need to destroy oil and gas now. That's an emergency, but
by the way, they have succeeded. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez tweeted out last night a celebration of the fact that the fossil fuel industry has collapsed in this country, saying now we finally have the opportunity to bring the Green New Deal. She later deleted that tweet because it seemed so callous towards the jobs of fossil fuel energy.
Did she really delete it? That's great.
Although it's a curious thing, because part of the Green New Deal relies heavily on mass transit. Right, they want to get rid of cars,
the most
and trucks,
efficient transmission of the disease.
Yes, and all the public health officials right now are saying stay away from buses and subways.
In fact,
and things like
I think
that.
next week we're going to bring Randall O'Toole on. Randall O'Toole's our urban studies guy, and he is just incredible on this. Yeah, isn't it amazing?
Yeah.
I told you that RTD killed. All right, let's talk to more girls, please. And again, if you want to be part, just raise your hand in Zoom, and we'll get to you. Let's go to Victoria M. Is that right? Victoria M. Victoria M. What are you drinking?
Whatever I can get my hands on, John. And I've been watching Abby. She's down in that wine like she's drinking shots.
Well, that's right. If you're on Zoom, maybe you can see other folks.
This is Senator Vicky Marble.
Hi, Vicky.
Hey, Vicky.
How are you, Tom?
I'm good. How are you? Good to see you.
Good to see you, too. So I just wanted to say that a lot of the things you say about politicians, I couldn't agree more. Most politicians fear social shaming more than they do the virus, for sure. And we're all factual based in the decisions we make. We're very, very good about that, except for certain politicians. And when you talk about the modeling, and I wanted to get back to that because, and by the way.
Oh, yeah. What are you drinking?
Blanton's.
What is it? Raise it up and just a little higher so I can see it. All I know is it's damn near empty, Vicky. And it was
a long time, Johnny.
Hey, can I?
10th Zoom meeting today.
I can imagine. Hey, Vicki, let me ask you a question. For those who don't know, Vicki Margable is one of our state senators. The state legislature has a 120-day limit, calendar days. Our Supreme Court, after many years, have now ruled that they don't need to be consecutive days because calendar days obviously are not consecutive days. Just try that with your bank on one of your loans saying it says calendar days. What is likely going to happen with the legislature? When are you guys going to go back into session, and how can we get you out of there as quickly as possible?
Well, the best thing is if we never got back there at all. But right now we're looking at the 18th of May to adjourn sine die on Memorial Day. Things that are on the agenda, the two main things are definitely cutting the budget and doing the school finance. We're looking at, in 4 years, a $7 billion deficit within the state of Colorado alone. But we all know that the financial outlook for the state of Colorado was, even before CV-19 came into play, was not looking all that pretty. And now that we have CV-19 coming in and the modeling that they're all saying is what they're basing the media decisions on and how they're reporting this. Well, the modeling doesn't have the ability to enter in correct data to get the correct modeling results that we need. They just don't. And they don't know when this virus came into the United States. And now there are reports of people who died of natural causes because they're 92 and they were sick for 5 years. And this is what happened. Well, now they got the death certificates in the family and it's coronavirus. This isn't even correct. None of the reporting from doctors and anything that's going in for data, we can't trust. Everything, it's unfortunate, has become a political agenda. And so what are we gonna do? You know, and I'm for the business owners, I'm for the people who want to go back to work. I think that it's time we trust those people who opened those businesses in the first place because they are the economic drivers. It's not the government. The government has been feeding off of these people for centuries and they aren't going to quit. But if we trust these people, you know that these business owners are going to open up in a responsible manner. We know who the vulnerable people are. They're going to stay at home.
We also know that people aren't going to go to a business if they don't feel safe, if they don't feel comfortable. Again, getting back to what I think you need to make as one of your prime bills next year, which is to make me a czar of the stripping commission, because I want to make sure that is a safe.
You want to be in charge of auditions, right?
Yeah, I'll be in charge of the auditions. Let's bring John Fund back into all this. I mean, I don't know if, John, if you know that.
I think the senator makes.
Go ahead.
Oh, I think the senator makes a very good point. Let's first, everyone has to first establish the fact that they care, and we do care. We need to spend more resources than time protecting the old, the vulnerable, and the frail than we even do now. But the healthy people, especially an enormous number of them who probably have antibodies right now because the virus has been going like a prairie wildfire through the population for several months, the healthy should be able to make some rational decisions about whether or not they should go to a store, whether or not they should go out, whether or not they should exercise, whether or not they should be able to ride a bike. The old, the frail, and the vulnerable, we have always protected in a pandemic. Again, I repeat, this is the first time in recorded history we have imprisoned the healthy. Why are we doing this and destroying our economy at the same time?
Let's keep going back to some of these great Zoomers. Hey, Senator, thank you so much. Let's talk to Ari Armstrong. Ari's been doing some incredible work lately. Ari, I need to know, what are you drinking? And you better be drinking, Ari, because you're the kind of guy that wouldn't be drinking because it's past your bedtime.
I have Upslope again. It's an old standby.
From what I know, that could just be the same empty can you used last week.
You busted me. Yeah. No, we did a nice order, so it's my essential beer stock.
First question. You have two of the most famous moon pictures ever right behind you. One from the Apollo mission where they didn't land, but it was right before. And then it looks like the first Apollo mission. Why?
I had a nice blank wall and I wanted something cool to put on there. And these are all public domain photos that I could put on a canvas print and it looks bitchin'.
I gave you a 8x10 glossy of myself.
That's behind Buzz Aldrin.
Oh, got it.
I have a question for John Fund. So the backstory is yesterday, Jared Polis did a media conference in which he said, look, we don't have the capacity to test our way out of this problem. We don't have the capacity to trace, even if we could test. So therefore, we're going to keep fairly tight lockdowns, fairly tight restrictions once we start to begin to reopen. So here's my question. Today, I had a conversation with the economist Robin Hanson, and we were talking about variolation. And also, Polis explicitly talked about herd immunity being part of our goal. So variolation means intentionally getting this by a doctor, administered by a doctor, because it's relatively safer to get it that way than to just go get it randomly. Do you have an opinion about that?
Do you mean like kind of like parents out up in Boulder who will go have their kids play with some other kid that has chicken pox just so they can get it early? Is it that kind of thing?
This is the responsible scientific version of what people used to do, with these kind of parties and such.
Look, I did pretty well in science class in school, and then I did pretty well in marketing class in school. And the one thing I can tell you from studying both subjects, you cannot market that approach at all. That's not a political winner. And I mean, I understand the theory behind it. What we have to do is say the tests themselves are not accurate enough as they currently stand for us to depend solely on the tests. As we know, the first test, whether you have the coronavirus, is only valid for a certain window of time, basically when you have symptoms. The antibody tests are highly variable. They're going to get better, but they're not as good as they should be right now. If you simply fall back on the crutch of testing, you're never going to open up this economy. And here we are in the trap. We got in the lockdown because we were worried about, the healthcare system collapsing. Well, it didn't collapse. We can handle what we have. Now we have to figure out, why are we still in the lockdown? It's because the politicians are scared to get out of it.
Although, Ari's suggesting something, and let me be the first to put it out there. If somebody's looking for a social disease, I have always been here.
Yes, you have. Though you're drinking Ardbeg, you might be disinfected.
I might be.
But I wonder if that's right. I mean, what was the concern that we would crash the healthcare system, or was it that there might be some people for whom there's not a bed available, a hospital bed?
Yeah, that was the problem.
That seems to be the
is there a bed? We're going to run out of beds.
I wonder, and I'm just going to put this out as a question. Maybe some of our Zoom audience would like to respond to this. This idea that we have a right to health care, that idea was introduced by Franklin Roosevelt back in 1932, and it has been percolating and it has been disseminating, right, just culturally, where today many millions of our fellow citizens think or they feel that they have a right to health care. Well, that means if they get sick, by golly, there had better be a hospital bed. They have a right to health care. There had better be a hospital bed available. And it seems to me a big part of how we got into this situation we're in is because of that widespread belief, or feeling, I prefer, that we have a right to health care. And therefore, it's unimaginable to some people that they could get sick and there might not be enough beds in the local hospital for them to get treatment.
Let's keep going to some Zoomers. Let's ladies first. So let's go to Holly Vila. Holly, tell me, what are you drinking?
Warrior whiskey, bottled in Crested Butte.
What whiskey? I'm sorry, I missed that.
Warrior.
Warrior whiskey. Nicely done.
Awesome.
Talking about this fear and the right to health care, et cetera, has anyone else noticed that since we're dealing with a generation of coddled American minds, that there's a lot more fear in the young people than people our age?
Oh, that is a brilliant question because
Holly, if you have helicopter children, you're going to have helicopter adults. Helicopter
Right.
parents, helicopter children lead to helicopter adults.
you know, kids today, listen, for people my age, we've never really seen economic hardship. I mean, my father had to deal with the stagflation years of the late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah.
And I was in high school chasing skirts. That wasn't my problem. We haven't really seen war, at least our generation. We've never seen anything hard. But these kids who are coming out today, the millennials and younger, this is frightening to their bones.
Yes.
You talk to people who are older who have actually been through the stuff our folks have been through. It's like this is just another damn thing.
In fact, let me add just an extra layer onto Holly's comments, because she's right to raise this question. Think about the people who 6 months ago were genuinely terrified that the earth is about to explode and burn up because of global warming. I mean, they were genuinely fearful. They worried whether the planet Earth would be here tomorrow. Those types. Imagine how they're viewing this whole coronavirus.
Yeah.
I mean, they have to be just utterly petrified.
Right, because they were scared of global warming. They were scared of fracking. They were scared of everything. And even though it would be thousands, hundreds, whatever years before that would happen. And now we could die of corona. I feel badly for these kids in that we haven't prepared them to take care of themselves.
Yeah, I agree. In fact, this is a big stretch here. I'm gonna reach really far to make a connection. But it's interesting to me that what we've noticed here in the modern era is a death of classical education, reading the classics.
That's just because you used to teach at Hillsdale.
Well, it's true. Places like Hillsdale College teach this, and the ancient thinkers, they really emphasize a few of the key virtues, and people like Aristotle and others argued that courage, in a way, is the crown of all the virtues. It's the thing that's necessary to exercise the other virtues. If you are frozen in fear, you can't exercise wisdom, for example, because you can't think well if you're frozen in fear. Courage is the virtue that allows you to exercise all the other virtues. And it's something that's utterly missing in most forms of education today, whether we're talking about the education parents relay to their own children or what they learn in schools, that idea that you have to be courageous to be a good citizen, to be a good human being, and what courage actually is. I think when we look around at our fellow neighbors today, we're seeing an absence of that.
When Fund was telling me about, again, when he was in his mid-40s, when the 1969
back in the 60s
Asian flu hit, that we didn't do anything. You took care.
We did.
You washed your hands.
Let me just. I'm phasing out and basically. You're
already in bed. Your second Grand Marnier and already tucked in.
But you make a very valuable point. Ronald Reagan famously said once, "There are simple answers to our problems. They're just not easy ones." And the Stoic virtues that were just mentioned, we have lost sight of them. In 1969, when I was in school, I remember the governor of our state going on television to address the Asian flu. And I went back and got the transcript of it. The governor was Ronald Reagan.
Wow.
And he said to us, "I'm not going to close the schools. We're not going to shut our factories and our stores. We are going to engage in common sense things that will fight this virus, this flu, which killed 116,000 people nationwide and almost 20,000 in California. And we're going to get over this. And I'm calling upon you to act responsibly with common sense and courage, the word that you just mentioned, to fight this. And we will get through this. And we did. Now,
Hey, John,
the world's different, but that's what Reagan told us in 1969. As he was governor.
I hope you quote that in one of your next articles.
I'm preparing an op-ed on that.
It's just terrific. I tell you what, you have been such a warrior for freedom over the years. I'm grateful for you for so many different things, and also you're a terrific planner because you're already laying in bed ready to pass out. So I'm gonna let you go do that. But
okay, thanks, John.
And thank you for everything you do for Colorado.
Everyone who participated, I enjoyed meeting all of you.
Thank you, John.
Which means
meeting all of you. Take care.
You and I, we're gonna keep.
We got the heavy lifting.
We got the heavy lifting. All right, we're gonna start rolling through these Zoomer calls because so many people want to be there. And if you want to be part of the conversation, when I say raise your hand, I mean press the button that says raise hand, not just actually
not just
raise
do
your
this.
hand. Let's go talk to Paul Prentice, who I think is out there someplace. Paul Prentice, are you with us?
John. Hey, John.
Hey, Paul.
Before I get to my comment, I wanted to say I was going to nominate you for the stripper commission for licensing.
Thank you.
You already beat me to that, so good job. Good job.
Well, we gave Governor Polis a whole bunch of policy recommendations.
Yeah.
He didn't know that about 2/3 in there was the stripper czar
stripper commission.
And then for Tom, I was just curious as to how you even knew about that. Was your personal application?
How did you know about that? And does your wife know you knew about that?
I'm a man of worldly travels and many talents, Paul.
He does research.
Okay.
It's just research.
So here's my comment, and I just wanted to see what you guys think about this. I am concerned about the virus.
Mm-hmm.
I am afraid of the economic collapse, and I am terrified at our loss of liberty. Do you think I have those in the right order and the right magnitude?
No, I do not think you have them in the right order. I think you got them completely backwards. I think first you should be worried about your loss of liberty. Secondly, you should be worried about the economic devastation, which could take years and could bring a new depression. And then you should, of course, be worried about the virus.
Yeah,
that's my thinking.
I was not clear about that. It was what I meant was the degree of concern.
I got you. I was listening to those adjectives. I got you.
I've been listening to the R bed.
Tom, you're not quite at the place where John is there, so
that's right.
But have you ever?
I'm all sober and clear-minded here. You know,
that's too bad. All right. So have you ever? So Lefroy. By the way, this is important. So if you get like the Lefroy whatever, it comes with this little tiny booklet.
Yes.
That is like an alcoholic's love journal.
Yes.
It says, you have been introduced to Lefroy. Obviously, someone who loves you very much introduced you. Now you have started a romance, which will last your lifetime. I could see some drunk. You understand me. No, nobody else understands me. So this one is Isla,
which is a little island, right off the coast on the southern part of Scotland.
Yeah, and then Lefroy is from
and
there
the thing
too.
is that whole island is covered with peat moss. So
it's not peat moss; it's peat.
It's peat. It's peat. And so they use that peat.
Look at Paul Prentice is finishing up his brew there. Yeah. So this one says, sea spray, tarry rope. Intense smoking. Anyway, if for those
There's
of us
an
with
art to writing the descriptions of Scott.
for those of us without a love life. All right. Hey Paul, so what are you most worried about? You're an economist down at CU Colorado Springs. How right am I to be worried about paper money, fiat currency being just expanded?
So actually, it's Colorado Tech. I was at CU in the Springs, but I was teaching too much Austrian and not enough Keynes. So it didn't work out that well. But yeah, but what I was saying is that yes, this Great Depression that we're in the middle of, and probably going to make it worse. That doesn't even bother me. It's what terrifies me is our loss of liberty, and that's what I was getting at earlier. So to your point, yeah, absolutely. This potential for great inflation coming out of this. They're testing the modern monetary theory, MMT, in real time right in front of us. And it's not over. They've already, they printed 4.5 trillion, I think, and they're about to monetize another 2 trillion, which is a third of the economy already. There's no end to it. So, Weimar Republic, maybe buy some gold would be a good idea.
Paul, I want to second here what you're saying, because it's actually very important, right? If you studied the history of any brutal, murderous tyranny, Soviet Union, Communist China, take your pick, Pol Pot, whatever, and you focus merely on the rate of inflation that happened with the printing of money, you're probably missing the big important stuff, right? That's not all that was going on. The printing of the money, the inflation, the economic control these were symptoms of the more fundamental problem, which is a few thought they had the rightful power and authority to control the many. And here's my concern. For the last 75 years, at least since the time of FDR and the New Deal, at least since then, probably going back earlier, Americans have been willingly giving up control over their lives, their liberty, to people in government, some of whom are elected, many of whom are not elected. And now we're at this period, right after 75 years of gradual government encroachment on more and more things, controlling, tightening its grip. We're in a situation now where government basically says, look, we're taking control of everything because we've deemed it to be an emergency, and we'll let you know when we think we're going to release that control.
For people who
that is terrifying.
For people who have the economist bug, Paul has it. I've got a little bit. He actually was schooled in it. I'm just a provocateur. Bank of America Corporation raised its 18-month gold price target to $3,000 an ounce. They just put out a report called "The Fed Can't Print Gold." Originally, they had a target of $2,000 in 18 months. But the point being, we haven't had price inflation. We keep building up more and more dollars and more and more dollars and more and more dollars. Sooner or later, price inflation has to meet monetary inflation. Right. And I got to think this might bring it on. Hey, Paul, thank you. We're gonna keep rolling with this. Bradley Mott, I need to know, what are you drinking, Bradley Mott?
So Breckenridge bourbon, although I'm almost out. So I'll have to
Breckenridge bourbon? What is Breckenridge bourbon?
It's just a bourbon by the Breckenridge distillery up in Breckenridge, Colorado.
By the way, you got something on your chin there.
Man, Brad, that beard puts both of us to shame.
Yeah, I know that is.
I've just got a little scruff, and John doesn't have much more. But man,
I've been thinking about shaving this part right here, and kind of making this all bushy, so it could be like the Colonel from the Civil War thing. It'll come back. Bradley, what do you got for us?
Well, you're talking about kind of the economic impact overall of some of this, and I pointed this out in chat, but wanted to mention, that my company, as an example, put out a notice that said, hey, if you're impacted by Corona, you're allowed to take out 100% of your 401k, just so in case you need it for emergency funds. So we're not only destroying today, and we're not only buying our way out. We're impacting the retirement of many people in the future who don't understand the economic impact of drawing out those retirement funds now.
Well, I think it's not a bad idea to let people have access to the money they have saved. I don't have a problem with that. Steve Moore and Art Laffer are going to be pushing an idea that says we need to get rid of the payroll taxes so that employers now have a bigger incentive to hire people because they're not paying for the employee their share, which is half.
Yes,
which is 7.5%, and the employee pays.
I support that. In fact, why not put a moratorium on many taxes? I mean, those in government just shut down virtually all productive activity. So I mean, how about the income tax? What if we had a year without an income tax?
Although what worries me is it's not the taxing, it's the spending.
Well, they sort of go together, right? I mean,
but they don't go together. So they go together in Colorado. They go together in Colorado because we have a balanced budget amendment, as in most states. But in a lot of places, the federal government, they can print money. Well, that's the problem.
Here was. I mean, you're right about that. And my first response when I heard rumblings that Congress was going to create some stimulus, new version of a stimulus package, my response was precisely the opposite. If I was a politician, which I'm not, and I have no plans to be, but if I was a politician, the very first thing I would have come out and said, oh my goodness, there's this tough thing going on, this virus, and a lot of you it's causing problems in your lives. So we in government are going to stop spending so much of your money. We are going to defund all these ridiculous, unconstitutional agencies and entire departments of the federal government so that you productive Americans can keep more of your resources, keep more of your own money to deal with this kind of emergency. Instead, our government did exactly the opposite. They went out and said, we are going to spend more money, which either you or your kids or your grandkids are going to have to pay.
Cool. I tell you what, love the beard. Don't lose it. Let's grab some of these other.
Good talking to you, Bradley.
Let's grab some of these other folks. John Henderson, tell me, what are you drinking?
I am once again drinking Crater Lake Rye.
Crater Lake Rye. Yeah, well, these are manly men drinking rye. I don't even know what rye is, but I just don't know. I know I don't have enough tough testosterone.
If you like Scotch, you would likely like rye.
All right.
Yeah. We got to do it. We should do it.
I didn't like rye bread.
Well, that's
like rye whiskey, John.
All right. What do you got for us, John?
Well, a couple comments. You guys have totally one-upped me on modern monetary theory, which is now obviously, is my theme the last 2 weeks, has been fully adopted, and the next stage is beginning to emerge, which is basically the direct federal funding by money printing of state budgets. And why do I think that they would like some money for like the Chicago Public Employees Pension Plan as well? It's coming. I mean, it's the next demand. It's what they're going to want. They deserve to be backfilled. You've kind of covered it, but the destructive aspect of all this has really not been fully explored. Nor
hey, let me jump in with John for a moment?
Let me put out my fear.
Yep.
Trump hasn't closed much. Trump has the authority to say you can't come into the country. We're going to stop planes. We're going to stop this. It is governors and mayors that have put us under house arrest.
That's right.
However, governors can't print money. They mostly can't even go into debt. Most states are like Colorado. You have to have a balanced budget, which is good. My big fear is that the feds are going to backfill these incredible deficits that the states are going to be running, at which point there is no cost to go ahead and control the economy.
So humor me for a moment. I think most of our audience here gets this, but some might not. Explain for people what's the difference between wealth, real wealth, and printed money. Why is it a bad thing? Because a lot of people think, well, they can just print money. They'll just print money and everything will be fine. What's the problem with that way of thinking?
Let me tell a story about a mutual friend of ours. I'll even drop his name, Ed McVaney.
Yeah.
Told me once that his granddaughter said the following, which is, you have all these poor people and they need money. Why don't we just make more money and give it to them? Right. And exactly. It was actually a very sweet 8-year-old type of answer.
She wanted to help people.
You need these pieces of paper, but you would give them pieces of paper. The problem is that money is a means of exchange. It used to be that, I had a chicken and you had a lamb and I give you 5 chickens for 1 lamb. And then I said, no, I'm only going to give you, 4 chickens. And you said, well, I can't give you 4/5 of a lamb. So we came up with these exchanges. And as long as the money meant something, we could have real prices. We could have exchanges. We could do these things. But once the money becomes meaningless, becomes monopoly, that we just make more of it, then you and I can't set prices. And that's when things go crazy. And when things go crazy, often that's what leads to a war. Now, it's one thing for Zimbabwe to inflate their money, and really they were using their money for fire. They were cooking their eggs on Zimbabwe dollars. Go to my office. I've got tens of billions. I've got
worth
trillion.
less than a piece of wood.
Yeah, it was worth less than a piece of wood. That's fine when it's Zimbabwe. When it was pre-war Germany with their dollars that they were printing, that's what led to economic collapse. I'm not saying we're there. I think we're a long, long way off from that. But someone has to sound the alarm.
And would you agree, though? I'm going to add a little qualifier there. So what we really want, the most important thing, is real wealth. And wealth, to be a wealthy person means to have something, whether it's a physical thing or maybe knowledge.
This is my bottle of Lefroy. This is mine.
Real wealth is to have something, create something, do something that other people value, that they want to buy from you. If you have things that other people want to buy from you, you're a wealthy person. And so we want is the creation of wealth, which means using your mind, using your hands, getting your butt up right off the couch and going and doing something productive. That's wealth. Whereas money is simply printing out pieces of paper. And those pieces of paper, when the Fed creates more money, there are no more houses built. There's no new medicines invented. There are no more cars, no more clothes. None of the things that we actually want and need for life.
Let me try it this way. Let me try this on you, Tom. And I've talked in front of classes about this. And I say, you need to understand, for me, the original sacrament. And the original sacrament is you've got an ice cream cone and I have $1. And I value that ice cream cone more than I value my dollar. You value my dollar more than you value your ice cream cone. Because we have a free relationship and we can associate freely thanks to our system of government, we trade. And we both walk away feeling better. We now have more than we had just a moment ago. That is the sacrament that is free association. And free people get to do that. And when you take my dollar and all of a sudden it's worth 50 cents, I can't buy it. I tell you what, we're going to keep going with those. We've got lots of folks on Zoom, so we're going to try to speed this up a little faster.
All those names up.
I know. Let's go to D. Walden, and after D. Walden, we're going to go to Mark Solomon. But D, tell me, what are you drinking, D? D, are you there? D. Walden. D. Walden going once. D. Walden going twice. Well, then we're just going to go to Mark. Hey, Mark, tell me, what are you drinking, Mark? I hear you. I hear D or Mark.
I have the Pride of Communism in my hand. It says rum from Cuba.
Oh, really? What kind of rum?
I'm on a club aged, the 9-year-old.
9. Well, my Scotch whiskey is 10 years old. We have seniority.
Well, mine is the age of Muhammad's wife, so it's great. Anyway.
God, that's awful.
All
right, Mark, what do you have for me?
So I know Dr. Prentice, you might knows this, but the word model gets thrown around. My first job out of college was building models of nuclear war. And models, as someone popped up in the comments, said garbage in, garbage out. But it's worse than that. Because the real garbage is inside the model. Because the model could be anything but, 2 times X. And that's the model. And for these epidemiological models, it's basically X times some number, right? And that's kind of it. And so, where does 6 feet go into account, right? So, and to the extent that the models that try to attempt the pathways of hurricanes every year, of which there are, half a dozen, most of which don't actually safely predict the motion of the hurricane after decades and decades and millions of data points. That the point is that we can't let people get away with saying my model is broken, blah blah blah. Your model is either shit or it works. It either produces the result that matches the truth or it does not. And if it doesn't, you can't. So we're just in the model.
Let me respond to Mark. So Mark, people who are familiar with me think of me as a guy who teaches political philosophy and reads the Constitution and
I
things
see you,
like that.
by the way, I see you more as a historian, a political historian.
Okay, I've kind of grown into that. That wasn't my actual training.
I mean this seriously, and it's not just the scat talking, Mr. Cranberry. That I've always valued how you reach in the past and you bring up something and relate it to today in a political way. And I think a lot of people reach to the past for things, but it's hard to bring it to today. And I think you do that uniquely. And
I appreciate that.
And what you do with Speakeasy Ideas, by the way, let's do a plug for that. Speakeasy Ideas is a service you do where you do that in front of folks. And unlike economists and teachers and blah, 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 and textbooks and you make these ideas come alive.
And I tell a lot of fun stories.
Yeah. And I really want people to go and see what you do.
They should go to speakeasyideas.com. We are right in the middle. We're telling the story right now. We are telling the story of slavery, how Americans abolished slavery. And they can go to our website, speakeasyideas.com.
And if people want a taste of that, just go to IITV on YouTube.
That's right.
Because you and I spend a good hour or so talking about why America should be proud of its history with slavery.
And now I'm going to completely switch gears and respond to Mark. So I began as an undergraduate in college as a math major, and I was fascinated with non-Euclidean geometry, with modern theories of math, and here's the thing, Mark. Right, as you look at systems that are increasingly complex, approaching infinite complexity, it becomes impossible, right, to try to model that, because what you find is chaotic, unpredictable, unmappable, unmodelable. I'm going to make that a word, unmodelable behaviors.
No, that was a Scotch. Right? You said unmodelable.
Unmodelable. And so the point is, with these incredibly complex systems, whether it's the spread of a virus through a population of animals, or it is all the interactions of all the elements involved in the global climate situation, you're talking about incredibly complex systems that nobody has figured out how to accurately model.
Here's the difference, and then I want to talk to Kevin. Modeling is important. Modeling is how people in the private sector make decisions. Should we release this version of Coca-Cola? Should we put out this hamburger?
Great point.
Should we invest in this or invest in that?
And sometimes they're wrong.
And they're often very, very wrong. But the difference is, they are investing with their money.
Correct.
When government experts do it in some fluorescent lit committee room, they are doing it not only with my money, now they're doing it with my liberty.
With my liberty. Yeah,
and that's the problem. All right, let's talk to Kevin McNaught. Kevin, tell me, what are you drinking? We're going to try to speed this up. We've got a few more folks, and we want to wrap this up in about 10 minutes or so. Kevin, what are you drinking?
I'm drinking a 10-year-old Talisker from an Islay, just north of Scotland.
That is a beautiful Scotch. It's all briny
and
salty.
Scotch.
It's a wonderful Scotch.
Nope.
Don't listen to John.
Terrible Scotch.
I know what I'm talking about.
I am so much smarter than Tom Cranwitter.
John, it would be a party in your mouth.
let me tell you.
That's what she said.
Let me tell you. I've had a party in my mouth, and it tasted nothing like Talisker.
That's great.
What do you have for us, Kevin?
So, I've been hearing that it's not a matter of human life versus the economy, but I keep hearing that's the dichotomy. That there's an issue of, well, some people on one side of the conversation are about human life, and some people on the other side are about the economy. And I get the sense that there's an equation, if not a general idea that the economy actually kills people. But what?
You heard. both Steve Moore and John Fund have made clear that for every half percentage point of unemployment, there are something like 10 to 20,000 deaths that happen.
And I'm going to say something they wouldn't say. I've come to dislike the term economy. I don't like, I get it. I'm a student of economics, but that term, that concept, the economy, I think in most people's minds, it conjures this idea of some abstract thing. The economy is this thing out there that people talk about with numbers and percentages, and they think I'm just a real human being, right? I love my kids and I have a name and I have a personality, and the economy is this great big abstract thing, whereas I'm an important human being. When we talk about the economy, we're talking about human beings. We're talking about individual human beings with names, with personalities, with loved ones, with interests, right? Who want to live, and it's how they interact. It's what they do and how they interact with others. You add all that up, and that's the economy. So when we talk about economic downturn, we're talking about the downturn in lives of human beings, real human beings. Economists, I run around with a bunch of PhD economists. They do it.
Suck.
Well, sometimes it does. I love those guys, but they're not good at humanizing their own science.
Well, let me try this one on for size, which is this. We talk about economics. I want to talk about relationships. The left and social justice warriors, progressives, understand the basic right to have a relationship. That if two guys want to get married, if two guys want to live together, if two guys want to have a homosexual relationship, we have to protect their right to do so. And by the way, I agree with them that relationship is sacred. It's none of government's business.
How about if you and I want to have a relationship trading things?
Exactly. If you and I want to have a relationship and it's a business relationship, I want to be an employer, you want to be an employee, I can afford $7 an hour, you're willing to work for $7 an hour. The government comes in with complete intolerance.
That's right.
And says that relationship, since it's below the minimum wage, is too perverse.
That's right.
Too sick, too weird. You cannot have that. And the same civil libertarians that come to the rescue for those other relationships that people want to have should be coming to the rescue.
If I say I can cut hair and you say I don't have
care.
much hair, Tom,
yes,
but I would like I'd like
Eric,
you to cut my hair.
Thanks for the
government says I can't do it without
Let's keep going, Kevin. Let's go to Eric Kelpak. Eric, welcome. You know, time's getting short when I'm getting so blotto. I need to play the ukulele. What are you drinking, Eric?
Oh, just beer. 90
What kind of beer?
There's no such thing as just beer. Oh, 90 shilling.
90 shilling.
Yeah.
That's good beer.
Cheers, Eric.
Oh, well, cheers to you as well. You mentioned earlier about wealth starting in the 1700s or 1800s. Thomas Sowell wrote a book, Conquest and Cultures, and he talked about the wisdom of the British and how they ascended in the 1800s, 1700s. In other words, when a shopkeeper closed his door on Saturday night, he knew that Monday morning the rules in Britain wouldn't change.
Yes.
So he had a lot of courage and a lot of guts to know there was this consistency in the British way of doing things,
yes,
which caused Britain to ascend. Which leads me to my point right now. I live in Louisville, Colorado, and I think about these restaurant owners and these bar owners who put 75, 80 hours a week into building their business.
Yep.
Now we're going to have the state come in and say, we're only going to let you open it part of the time. If I'm a business owner, here's my concern. Do I invest that time in 2020 and 2021, knowing that in 2022, when there's another pandemic, they can come in and take my livelihood away from me?
Man, Eric, you make a great point. Today on my Facebook page, if people want to find me on Facebook, it's at Tom Cranowiter. And I
like
wrote
anybody can frickin' spell Cranowiter.
Krannannetter. Just like it sounds.
Just like it sounds.
Just like it sounds. Long in German. Anyway,
spelled SMITH.
I mentioned up there that I'm a teacher of political science, and I've taught many seminars on the Federalist Papers. And in the Federalist Papers, the whole book, the word arbitrary appears 13 times. And every single instance, it is used as a synonym for despotic government power. A government that is arbitrary, government that does one thing one day and then just completely for no reason at all, changes its mind the next. The authors of the Federalist Papers use that as a synonym for despotism. That is despotic government. And if you look through the whole history of political philosophy, there's that correlation between arbitrary government power and despotic government power. One of the things the English figured out was this idea of the rule of law. Let's actually have laws that say, here's what government may do, and here's the extent it can do it, and here's what it is, so that even laws that tend to be unjust, as long as they're not arbitrary and changing all the time, you can kind of plan around them. Whereas when they're changing arbitrarily, haphazardly, you don't know what to do. I agree with you 100%. If you're trying to run a business, you're trying to run a restaurant, you think, are they going to let me open next week, next month? I don't know. How do you plan to allocate your capital?
This Friday night on Devil's Advocate, the show we do on Colorado, PBS 12, talking with a restaurateur. And I always thought, well, just open it up at least half speed. And he looked at me and said, in so many words, are you an idiot? We will go bankrupt. The model we have is on Friday and Saturday nights is when we make our money. And if we can only do half, then we're just going to go bankrupt and we're going to take more of your money.
Right.
And so, which is odd because when you think about it, given this virus, I don't know if people want to go out or not. That's a market decision.
Right.
The market will decide. What goes on now is the government, and Jared Polis says you will not go out. Hey, thanks for the call. Keep going with that. Let's say hello to Kathleen Cologne. Kathleen, welcome. I need to know what you're drinking, and do we still like the name Cologne because that's what's up there. What are you drinking? And you better be drinking something.
I think it's Cologne.
I have to have a glass of wine.
Is it really a wine? Because if I know Kathleen, it's
Hey,
not.
Kathleen.
Hi, Kathleen.
How are you doing? Nice to meet you. Is the United States, we're not the first country to end the distancing and the quarantining, self-quarantining, are we? John's not there anymore, right?
Oh, he's right here.
No, Fund's not here.
John Fund is not here.
No, no. I mean, what is it? Wuhan is now open.
Right. Yes, that's right. As are many cities in China.
Yeah. So we're not the first.
Well, I mean, other than that, I mean, like, democratic cities.
Like democratic, I mean, free cities.
Like real cities,
Well, I mean, I look north, and Wyoming hasn't done this. Wyoming hasn't closed its borders. North Dakota, South Dakota, I don't think it's closed itself down. It will be interesting to see if their death rates are much higher. I don't think they will be.
Right.
Now, mind you, they are very rural, but so is Colorado. The idea that Delta, Colorado, with population 300, is closed down makes no sense. Right.
Yeah. Well, the reason I'm asking is, I mean, I assume that the transitions that have happened, especially in China, because they don't have a choice, have been smooth. But I question our transition to ending the quarantine and self-distancing and all that will go smooth, because I just see it as an opportunity for people who are opposed to that there might be a lot of protests and violent ones.
So Kathleen, I might be a minority here in this audience. I don't know.
Yeah, you look like a minority.
But from the moment this virus was announced, I've taken it seriously, and I continue to take it seriously. I have a.
You weren't saying that before, or you were necking it?
I have a 20-year-old daughter who has asthma, and people with asthma are at very high risk. I mean, but bad things can happen if your lungs start filling up with fluid and you have asthma. And my daughter works as she's a college student. She works as a cashier at a pharmacy. And up until now, I always thought, oh, what a perfect job for my college student daughter, right? She's working it's nice and safe. Well, it turns out to be one of the most dangerous jobs now, because because she's front line in the sense that she's interacting with a bunch of sick people coming in the pharmacy, but she's not in a hospital. She's not in a medical clinic where they're not all taking a lot of precautions. And so I'm talking to my daughter every single day, working on way to keep her safe. I sent her masks. She's got gloves. She's washing her hair, doing all that stuff. So I take the virus seriously.
And by the way, our Dave Copel put out an incredible article on the usefulness of masks and how to do masks and all the rest. And I agree with you. I've got, you met my son. My son has Down syndrome. I worry about this stuff. This is real. And so vulnerable populations need to be protected.
And so my point is, I want people to live freely and wisely. Choose wisely. If you're worried at all about your health, don't go put yourself out in high risky situations. Don't do that. Think.
I tell you what,
I'm not talking about anything rational. I'm talking about politically, because it can be used by people and because we have an election coming up, right? It can be used to, as a reason to protest and to inflate the danger and all of that. And I'm just
let me put it this way. I support the people who are out protesting to open up the state, open up the country. I agree with them. I'm grateful that they're doing it. I know that the media will mislabel them as doing something dangerous. They will take photographs that make it look like they're being closer. We have to be careful when we protest to make it very clear, no, we're doing it responsibly. We are doing it in a way that shows we want to open up the world, but we're responsible in doing that. The media is never going to give us a break on it. They will always find the camera angle that makes it look like we're climbing on top of each other, that we're anarchists, that we're there with our guns. They'll find the one guy, the two guys.
Right.
But that doesn't mean we don't stop trying, and it doesn't mean we don't stop protesting. I tell you what, let's take two more Zoomers here, and then we got to finish up. Then we're going to finish up the scotch without anybody else here. Let's talk with Kevin. Hey, Kevin Redmond, tell me, what are you drinking, Kevin?
This is my golden ticket.
This is my
Wild turkey.
Hold it up one more time. I missed it.
Wild turkey.
Wild turkey.
Si, senor.
See. What do you have for us, Eric?
Well, it's just that, it seems to me that there's like an equation there, or a numeric threshold. We've obviously spent a lot of money or consumed a lot of wealth with this shutdown.
Yep.
And we've potentially, hopefully, saved a lot of lives. So the question is, how much is an American life worth? I mean, how do we establish that threshold that says, if we take this action, it's worth it? Or if we don't take the action, it's worth it?
Right.
I haven't crunched the numbers. Somebody should crunch the numbers.
Here's the thing: is if you're an actuary, you make these god awful calculations and nobody talks about it.
Yep.
You remember Fight Club,
Yep.
Which I taught my son to say, we're in Pillow Fight Club. There's still two rules about Pillow Fight Club. Anyway, and there are actuaries who try to say what a human life is worth.
Yeah.
Politically, you can never ever say that. No politician can ever say that. So to save one life, we will destroy the entire economy. Right. What we need to do a better job of is to explain that when you destroy the entire economy,
you're destroying lives.
You're destroying more lives.
Yeah.
That's where we have lost this debate, and we always do.
And that's back to my point about disliking this concept of the economy, right? Because people tend to think of it in terms of abstract dollars and numbers and percentages, and not thinking those are people.
People. But that person, I mean, I've talked about Smoker Friendly. My friends over at Smoker Friendly, they sell these terrific cigars. Now, I can go to the liquor store. That's essential. I can go to the pot store and get my marijuana. That's essential. I can't go to get a cigar because that's not essential.
Arbitrary.
I can go to Home Depot and buy a washer and dryer, but I can't go to my friends over at Appliance Factory and buy the same washer and dryer because they don't sell nails. This is where
that's arbitrary.
It is arbitrary,
and Americans shouldn't tolerate it anymore.
We shouldn't tolerate it at all. Hey, Kevin, thank you so much. All right, let's finish this up. Let's talk with Eric. Eric, I need to know, what are you drinking?
I am drinking Shiner Black Lager.
What kind of black lager?
Shiner beer.
Oh, that's some good stuff.
From a Shiner brewery in the Spatzel Brewery in Shiner, Texas. It was founded in 1909, the same year as Adolf Coors, by an immigrant. And it's good beer at a good price. You ought to check it out.
Way to go, I remember in college, by the way, I needed beer. And so I went to Liquor Mart. Yeah, I went to Liquor Mart. Liquor Mart had this walk-in cooler, which I said, when I die, I don't want to be cremated. I just want to be frozen and put into the beer cooler. And they had this god-awful stuff. I think it was called Lone Star beer. And so I bought a case of it for literally $4. All right. And it was the beer that stayed in the back of the refrigerator. And so at the end of the night, when you still needed another beer, you pulled up a lot. It was the worst stuff. And it said something like, the pride of San Antonio, Texas.
Oh. So Eric, what's going on this evening?
Well, I guess the one thing I'd like to say is you might see my coronavirus beard here.
Oh yeah, it's looking good, man. I just started mine. It's just like stubble.
With this,
you're not.
Yeah, I'm like 3 days in.
You're like 5 months in, you wimp.
It'll never be the same. But I'm really encouraged that we're starting to see this antibody testing. It started with Stanford. They did 3,000 some in the Bay Area. I see New York is doing it now. A teaching hospital in Michigan and UCLA. And I just texted my brother-in-law, who's an LAPD lieutenant, and told him that he ought to talk to UCLA and get all those guys tested. But I think that if we start getting people, I mean, my wife, my daughters, they had week-long fevers in early March, late February. More of us may have already had this than we even know. And as soon as we get past this fear and the stigma, we could be Americans again. Well, I mean, some of us already are, but
I don't know. I worry if we'll ever be Americans again.
I'm going to be an American. We're going to show the way.
You go ahead and believe that. Hey, Eric, thank you so much.
Cheers, Eric.
I tell you what, it's time for us to sign off here. I want to do a few thanks. First of all, to Tyler Massey, who has been putting all this stuff together, to Damon Sasso, who somehow made all this happen and keep us all together, to John Fund, who joined us, Tom Cranaware with Speakeasy Ideas. Just go to speakeasyideas.com. At the Independence Institute, we need your help. So if you've ever been part of what we do, go to independenceinstitute.net, or actually better yet, just go to thinkfreedom.org. We'd love to keep doing this. I don't know if this is a great thing to do or a silly thing to do, but we can't let them win. We can't let them tell us how to live. And I've always had a theory that the best way to do that is to have fun. The best way to do that is not to be a cranky, angry conservative, but to actually be a fun, loving liberty lover. And that's what we do at the Independence Institute. And so please be part of it. If you do nothing else, go to thinkfreedom.org, sign up for our newsletter, tell a friend. Maybe we'll do this again. Who knows? Maybe even when we're done from House Erect, we'll
arrest, not erect.
A House Erect. We'll just keep doing this. Tom, hey, thanks. What you do is amazing. So how about one? Here's to liberty.
Here's to liberty.
Here's to liberty.
Cheers.
And good night.
Thank you.